Hi everyone, this is Allie with the Perception Trainers, author of The Perception Diet, and today I want to start a series. It'll probably be just a two-part series, so this will be part one of our series on the mother wound. So I actually got an email request to do a video on the mother wound, and I actually thought that this was a really awesome idea because I think that it's actually a really important topic to talk about that doesn't get talked about enough. And I think that as being someone who has gone through a lot of healing with my mother and with femininity and all that stuff, I think that there's a lot to be said here that maybe isn't being said very often and very much, that can be very helpful and very clarifying. And so that is what I want to talk about today and in the next video. So to start this conversation on the mother wound, just to kind of bring some light as to what it is if you're confused about what it is, it's essentially that feeling of being let down by our mothers, that feeling of being not mothered by our mothers. It can be like a sense that our moms weren't really our moms, that they didn't fill the role that we were looking for them to fill as mothers, or that we felt not nurtured, or that we are lacking that feminine, loving, nurturing, caregiving element in our lives that is so important for, especially, well, like I would say it's equally important for men and women to experience being mothered and being loved by their mothers and being nourished and nurtured and to experience that feminine energy. So so that is basically the mother wound. It's that separation from that feminine part of ourselves and from feeling like you were receiving the feminine love and nourishment from outside yourself. So I wanted to talk about this in a little bit of a broader perspective because I feel like if we really take a look at history and kind of why maybe our mothers were the way that they were, healing can be a little bit easier. So I want to start this conversation way back with my grandparents' generation. So the people that are on the earth right now who are in their 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s and beyond, they lived in a time of war. And I believe that we really need to consider how impactful that is to a person's psyche and to the energetics of an entire generation. So being raised in wartime, they essentially experienced their entire well-being, their whole way of surviving. They experienced their resources being zapped overnight. They experienced going from being okay to not being okay in the blink of an eye. They experienced the other shoe dropping. Okay, so being raised in wartime, being an adult in wartime, being a child in wartime, it does something very strong to your psychology and to your energy. And so, like, understanding that they were raised in a time of fear, like just intense, all the time fear that was real. So it wasn't like imagined. They weren't afraid of, snakes coming and biting them or something. Like, they were literally afraid of something that could actually happen. Their survival was at risk at all times. Okay? So, and because of the whole nature of the way society was up until that even led to war, is that we were living in a very masculine society. War is a very masculine thing. All of the leaders of the world were men. And war happened, which is this huge scarcity mentality, the other shoe can drop at any time thing that just plummets the world into even more intense masculinity. And we saw this, right? We saw the men going off to war. And so the women had to start filling men's roles, right? They started working in factories. They started being breadwinners, essentially. And this whole kind of generation where things started to turn around, that women started to need to fill the roles that men were originally filling, because the men were gone. They were at war. And so this kind of starts off our journey into the mother wound, because we see that there was this huge turn of events with energy and with femininity that was, coming for a long time, and then it finally kind of realized itself during this war time period, where women had to be men. They had to buck up. We had to survive. We had to be strong, because this whole big masculine world had kind of culminated into this big masculine, scary, survival of the fittest world, okay? And experiencing the other shoe dropping, you needed to be strong. And this was a perception. This is not necessarily the ultimate truth, but this is how people saw it, right? You needed to be masculine. There was no time to be feminine and loving and nurturing and blah, 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 blah. Like, we were waiting for a bomb to drop, okay? So that was that. So then my parents' generation, so those are the baby boomers, right? So the people who are in their 50s and 60s right now, maybe late 40s. They experienced a really, really, really weird time on this earth, okay? And that was the post-war era, where their parents had grown up waiting for the other shoe to drop and having it drop, okay? So they experienced their whole lives changing overnight. They experienced the Depression. They experienced war. They experienced, like their cities getting bombed. They experienced, we had money today, we don't have money tomorrow. They went through this whole big thing, and then by the time our parents came around, the world, so the 40s and 50s and 60-year-olds that are alive right now, they experienced this world where the other shoe wasn't dropping anymore. Okay, so war was over. The economy was on an upswing. We were essentially recovering from war, but energetically, their parents, because they experienced this other shoe dropping, and they experienced war, and they experienced this whole huge masculine swing, they were still living like that. Okay, so my parents grew up in a world where they were waiting for the other shoe to drop, but it never did. Okay, so this energetically is incredibly important to consider, because it's one thing to be expecting the other shoe to drop and then having it drop, and then you get to deal with it, and you get to actually, see yourself through the struggle and witness that you can be okay, and witness your own strength and witness your own abilities to make it through this struggle or this thing that's happened to you, right? So that's one thing. My parents, the baby boomers, experienced a world where they were waiting for the other shoe to drop constantly, and it never did, meaning they were just in a perpetual state of fear that got no payoff, okay? So there was literally no moment where they got to actually see themselves through it. They never got to actually experience the other shoe dropping and then watching themselves deal with it and see that they were strong and capable. So because they were in this energetic state of waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it never actually did, because, right, like I said, essentially speaking, the world was on an upswing. We were recovering from war. War didn't happen again. The Depression didn't happen again. Our parents lived in this weird state of perpetual fear, and then they needed to start to kind of create things in their reality to make the fear make sense. So there was a lot of, struggle and people making maybe poor decisions and poor life decisions, because they're in this perpetual state of fear. So of course you're just going to make bad choices when you're in a perpetual state of fear. And energetically, again, they were not only in a state of fear, that they're in a state of masculinity, they're in a state of fear, they're in a state where now women have to be men, and women are expected to fill masculine roles and to start to do and be everything to everyone, rather than going back to just being allowed to be the feminine and have the masculine take care of the masculine stuff and the women take care of the female things, we started to have gender equality, which again, this is not a bad thing, right? Gender equality is obviously a huge step forward, but the way that we've gone about it is a very masculine thing, right? We still are not at a place where we're valuing the feminine as an equal commodity to the masculine. Okay, so with gender equality, what we really did was we gave women a chance to be men also, right? We didn't actually bring equality to the two states. And this is why I think it's so important to look at the history and to understand maybe where this mother wound came from, so that healing from it can be a little bit easier. So what I want you to know is that if you've got a mother wound, so anyone from any generation essentially that we are living in today probably has a mother wound, right? Because femininity was so thrown by the wayside and so undervalued, and we were in this time of scarcity, and we were in this time of war, or we were in this time of waiting for the other shoe to drop. And so femininity was not a high priority, and because we were already so masculine, we saw femininity as a weakness. And based on the mindset, that made sense at the time, right? So we didn't have a bunch of women walking around in their feminine and able to be mothers. Because this is the thing, to be a mother and to truly express motherhood and to truly nourish and nurture and love and all of this stuff, you need to feel safe. You need to feel supported. You need to feel like you're taken care of and you're going to be okay. And so that you can be this receptacle of just like love and compassion and joy and all of this stuff, and that just didn't exist on our earth. Most women did not live like that. And so that is part one to my mother wound. It's just understanding that this world has made it very tough to be in the feminine nature, especially for the two generations before my generation. It makes a lot of sense that there weren't a lot of mothers out there that were really, truly fulfilling this motherhood role, because we couldn't, right? The world just wasn't set up to support that. And so in my next video, I'm going to talk about what you can do to heal your mother wound if you have one. And then I think I will probably have to make a third one all about you stepping back into your feminine and us creating a new world where femininity is valued and respected for what it really is, and how we can start to create that, because we have the world structure right now where we can start to turn the tables. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns about that, please leave them down below. I'd love to hear from you. Like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.